Welcome to Speak English Easily. Improve your English with our fun stories and listening practice. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video for more engaging lessons. A long time ago, in a faraway forest, there lived a little mouse named Max. Max was very small, but he was very brave. He lived in a tiny hole under a big oak tree. Max loved to explore the forest, but his mother always told him to be careful. "The forest is full of dangers," she would say. "You must always stay close to home." But Max was curious. He wanted to see the world and have adventures. One day, while his mother was sleeping, Max decided to go on a big adventure. He packed a small bag with some cheese and bread and left his home. Max walked and walked until he came to a river. The river was wide and the water was fast. Max didn't know how to swim, so he looked for a way to cross. He saw a big log floating in the water and thought, "If I can get on that log, I can cross the river." Max ran to the log and jumped on it. The log started to move, and Max held on tightly. The river carried him downstream, and Max felt both excited and scared. After a while, the log stopped near the riverbank. Max jumped off and looked around. He was in a part of the forest he had never seen before. Max walked deeper into the forest. He saw tall trees, colorful flowers, and heard the sounds of birds singing. But then he heard a loud growl. Max stopped and looked around. He saw a big, scary bear coming toward him. Max was very scared, but he didn't run. He stood still and thought, "What should I do?" The bear came closer and said, "Who are you, little mouse? Why are you in my forest?" Max took a deep breath and said, "My name is Max, and I'm on an adventure. I didn't mean to bother you, Mr. Bear." The bear looked at Max and said, "You are very brave, little mouse. Most animals run away when they see me. But you stood your ground. I like that." Max smiled and said, "Thank you, Mr. Bear. Can you tell me more about this forest?" The bear nodded and said, "Of course. But first, let's have some food. I'm hungry, and you must be too." The bear and Max sat down and shared the cheese and bread Max had brought. After they ate, the bear told Max many stories about the forest. Max listened carefully and learned a lot. When it was time to go home, the bear said, "Max, you are a brave little mouse. But remember, the forest can be dangerous. Always be careful." Max thanked the bear and started his journey back home. He crossed the river, walked through the forest, and finally reached his little hole under the oak tree. His mother was waiting for him. She was very worried, but also very proud of her brave little mouse. From that day on, Max continued to have adventures, but he always listened to his mother's advice. He learned that being brave doesn't mean you shouldn't be careful. After his first big adventure, Max the mouse became famous in the forest. All the animals knew about the brave little mouse who had faced the big bear and made a friend. Max continued to explore the forest, but he always remembered his mother's advice and the bear's warning. One day, Max heard about a magical place deep in the forest. It was called the Crystal Cave. The cave was said to be filled with beautiful crystals that sparkled like stars. But no one had ever seen the cave because it was guarded by a fierce dragon. Max was curious. He wanted to see the Crystal Cave and bring back a crystal for his mother. He knew it would be dangerous, but he was determined to try. He packed his small bag with some food and set off on his journey. Max walked for hours until he came to a dark part of the forest. The trees were tall and thick, and the sunlight barely reached the ground. Max felt a little scared, but he kept going. Finally, he saw a large mountain with a big cave at its base. The cave was dark, but Max could see a faint glow coming from inside. Max took a deep breath and entered the cave. The walls were covered with crystals that sparkled in the dim light. Max was amazed. He had never seen anything so beautiful. But then he heard a loud roar. The ground shook, and Max saw a huge dragon coming toward him. The dragon was big and scary, with sharp teeth and fiery eyes. Max was very scared, but he didn't run. He stood still and said, "Please, Mr. Dragon, I don't mean to bother you. I just want to see the crystal cave." The dragon stopped and looked at Max. "You are very brave, little mouse," the dragon said. "Most animals run away when they see me, but you stood your ground. Why are you here?" Max explained, "I heard about the crystal cave and wanted to see it. I also wanted to bring a crystal back for my mother. She loves beautiful things." The dragon thought for a moment and said, "You are a brave and kind little mouse. I will let you take one crystal, but you must promise to never tell anyone about this place. The crystals are magical, and if too many animals come here, the magic will disappear." Max nodded and said, "I promise, Mr. Dragon. Thank you." The dragon led Max deeper into the cave and showed him the most beautiful crystal. It was small but sparkled like a star. Max carefully picked it up and put it in his bag. He thanked the dragon and started his journey back home. When Max returned to his little hole under the oak tree, his mother was waiting for him. She was very worried, but also very proud. Max gave her the crystal and told her about his adventure. His mother hugged him tightly and said, "You are the bravest little mouse in the world, Max. But please, promise me you will always be careful." Max promised, and from that day on, he continued to have adventures. But he always remembered to be brave, kind, and careful.